Okay, the last slide. And that's sort of like a summary of things that I found worked, as well as things that did not necessarily work. So the first point on the things that did work is there was quite a bit of some interaction among the students where they commented. This was in the early days though, where they commented on each other's work. So if someone had posted something, someone would come back and say, hey, so-and-so, you forgot to mention this, or you forgot to mention that, or so-and-so, I didn't realize that that's what happens in Samoa. Here in Tonga, we do the following things, and so on. So there was a lot of that sort of kind of interaction in the early days, which was encouraged at the time. What I did find in terms of what did not work, as time went by, the interaction kind of decreased until in the end it became non-existent. And that probably was more, a fault on my part as a lecturer, and that I should have probably prompted them to carry it on and keep going and commenting on each other's work and so on. But in the end, it became about them sort of just wanting to get in there, dump their answers and get out, sort of thing. So that could also have just been a case of too many other assessments going on and so on. Who knows what goes on in the mind of a student. The next thing in terms of what did work was having the whole discussion in one location or one thread was very, very helpful. And the students would be able to log in and see the entire conversation. They could appreciate what was going on in different jurisdictions and so on. And for the lecturer, it was easy to keep track of what was being said. And also it meant when it came to printing it out, you had just one document to print out. But it's just one document that you needed to open, and then everything would load and you could print it out from there. The 30-minute delays, or the no visibility reduced. No visibility here being if you didn't participate, then you couldn't see the thread. This sort of had a pro and con about it. So the pro here being that it reduced students copying from each other and getting sort of like that little heads up before they actually give their answers, because they had to post, and they posted blindly, not knowing what anyone else had said. Then only after 30 minutes would they then get access to everybody else's answers and read through it. If they wanted to add anything further to their own, they had that option to then sort of go back in and tweak and fix it and so on. The con to it was that if you didn't post, then it meant that you never got to see what the other students were saying. And as a face-to-face student, you can appreciate that sometimes you have students that will go to tutorials and they will sit in a tutorial, they will never say a word the entire semester. But that whole time, not only have they come every week, they've been listening, they've been correcting their own work, despite you prompting and trying to get them involved. They're correcting their own work, but they're benefiting from hearing the discussion. So that was sort of like a shortcoming of how the forum is set up, that if you never participated, you never got to benefit from the discussion. So one thing that I did find helped with overcoming that problem was to then actually at the end of every topic discussion, to then send out a news announcement, and in that news announcement to provide feedback for the students to know these were some of the issues that you needed to discuss, these were some of the factors that you had to take into account, and this is some examples of which pieces of legislation you needed to include in your answer and so on. So that helped for those that never participated in the forums but were still a student but just couldn't be bothered actually writing something and posting it on there. So at least they got what technically would have been not necessarily the correct answer, but feedback in terms of what would have been an appropriate discussion of what needed to be included for that answer. So they still got something out of it, but just missed that whole general discussion from everybody else. And then, what else have I got on there? Things that didn't work. You had to keep an eye on student enrollment so that you could go in and update, add and remove users and all of that kind of stuff. And as with our face-to-face tutorials, the numbers usually settle by about week 5 roughly. So you needed to do the same as well for your online, especially your online students, to sort of keep track of who was still a student. And if you had new ones that had enrolled, you needed to keep track and add them to that group, otherwise they wouldn't even have that opportunity to participate. And then, what have I got as the last one? If you wanted to provide an individual student with specific feedback, you either had to post something that the whole group would see, or you had to email them separately. So it doesn't sort of have that option to reply to something that they've said, and if they've got it wildly wrong, to sort of get them back in line again. It didn't have that option to do so privately, so you had to sort of go back and send them a specific email and all of that kind of stuff. And that is what I learned with the question and answer forums. That's it.